Today we are going to talk on an interesting topic, and we have got Dr. Sridhar with us. The topic of interest is pre-diabetes. Hello, Dr. Sridhar. How are you?
Hello, Prakash. How are you? I'm fine. Thanks.
Dr. Sridhar, thanks for participating in the discussion today. We would like to get your insights on this very important topic. Let's jump straight onto the topic. Now, Dr. Sridhar, what is pre-diabetes? Pre-diabetes அப்படின்னா என்ன? And pre-diabetesக்கும் diabetesக்கும் என்ன வித்தியாசம்?
Yes, I think most of the viewers will know, if not all, that what diabetes is and how it's diagnosed. Very common condition. But pre-diabetesன்றது வந்து நிறைய பேர் தெரிஞ்சிருக்க வாய்ப்பு இல்லை. இப்போ it's beginning to come into play, and a lot of people are recognizing it's an important aspect leading up to diabetes. So it's a period where it could be few months to few years where the blood glucose level remains very high, consistently high, but not high enough to diagnose as diabetes. So, for example, you might go and have a routine blood test, and it might be normal. It's not hit the level of diabetes, and then you might think it's okay. You might be in the pre-diabetes stage, which means that in a few years down the line, you may develop diabetes.
Okay. So, blood test எடுக்கிறப்ப வந்துட்டு what is the level of blood sugar levels where you categorize pre-diabetes to diabetes and normalcy?
Okay, so usually வந்து நம்ம ஏதாவது ஒரு டயக்னோஸ் பண்ணோம்னா என்ன சிம்டம்ஸ் அப்படின்னு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பார்ப்போம் இல்லையா, அதுக்கப்புறம் தான் பிளட் டெஸ்ட்லாம் பண்ணுவோம் or other investigations. But pre-diabetesல வந்து இன்ஃபேக்ட் even in diabetes sometimes symptoms இருக்காது. So we might think that everything is fine, you might think you're fit and well and nothing is wrong, but then you may notice some slight changes which may be very non-specific. So tiredness, increased thirst, a little bit of not able to think properly and things like that. ஒரு மாதிரி general symptoms இருக்கும், or sudden change in weight இருக்கலாம். You might think that நான் diet change பண்ணதுனால அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு, but so symptoms எதுவுமே ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்கா இருக்காது. So you might think that everything is fine. So routine blood test பண்ணும்போது ரெண்டு விதமான blood test பண்ணலாம். Sometimes you do fasting blood glucose, which is very common, or HbA1c, which gives you a average blood glucose control over a 3-month period. So 126க்கு மேல இருந்ததுன்னா எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும் டயபிட்டிஸ்னு சொல்லிட்டு கன்சிஸ்டன்டா இருக்கணும் 2-3 வாட்டி டெஸ்ட் பண்ணும்போது. 100க்கு கீழே இருந்ததுன்னா நார்மல். But if it's below 100 and 126, that's a pre-diabetic stage. So you are at risk of developing diabetes. HbA1c எடுத்துக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா anything above 6.5 is diabetes, 6.5%. Anything below 5.7 is normal. But if it's between this 5.7 and 6.5%, then you are having pre-diabetes. You have to have at least 2 readings to show there is a consistent race.
சரி, இத்தனை நாளா வந்துட்டு இது பத்தி இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுக்காம ஏன் இப்ப வந்துட்டு pre-diabetes பத்தி நிறைய பேசுறோம் இப்ப? What is the importance of this pre-diabetes state?
Not just in diabetes, generally in chronic medical condition, I think we have been looking at how to prevent it. What are the early warning signs? So for hypertension, for diabetes, for heart conditions. So we are all beginning to be aware more. I mean, when we were in medical school 20 years ago, we didn't even know that diabetes could be reversed or could be so we thought start medication, go into insulin, that's it. But because we know that if we catch early, there are things that we can put in place, very simple things like we can talk about.
என்ன சொல்ல வரீங்கன்னா வந்துட்டு pre-diabetes ஸ்டேஜ்ல வந்துட்டு நம்ம அதை ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணிட்டோம்னா நம்ம டயபெட்டிஸ் ஸ்டேஜுக்கு போகாம நார்மல்சி ஸ்டேஜுக்கு இந்த பக்கம் நமக்கு வந்துடலாம், கிரீன் ஜோனுக்கு வந்துடலாம். நம்ம வந்து ஆம்பர் ஜோன் டிராபிக்ல வந்து நின்றுட்டு இருக்கோம், விட்டோம்னா ரெட் ஜோனுக்கு போயிடும், which is established diabetes, which is irreversible. ஆனா வந்துட்டு நம்ம ஆரஞ்சு ஜோன்ல இருக்கிறப்ப வந்துட்டு கேர்ஃபுல்லா இருந்தோம் அப்படின்னா வந்துட்டு திரும்பி கிரீன் ஜோன் போறதுகளுக்கான வாய்ப்புகள் இருக்குது. Is that my understanding correct, Dr. Sridhar?
Yeah, it's very good way of putting it. Very simply, like using traffic lights. Yes, we are in the amber zone, Because lots of research have been done in the last 10-15 years. We know about this pre-diabetes and who are at risk of developing diabetes. So we can put things in place and we can reverse. Even if it's early stage of diabetes, we can reverse it. That's possible.
All right. Okay. So, அப்படிங்கிற பட்சத்துல வந்துட்டு, what are all the common risk factors for developing this pre-diabetes? I presume both the risk factors for diabetes kum pre-diabetes kum same common risk factors da irukku nenikren. Am I correct?
I think you are correct again. And now the diabetes and pre-diabetes are probably the same or the same spectrum. So it's a continuum. It's a continuous process from pre-diabetes to diabetes. So essentially there is glucose intolerance. That's the main factor for both. So இப்போ risk factors எடுத்துக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா வந்து like diabetes, family history, your genetics, your race, your ethnicity, your age, these are all risk factors which you can't do much about. These are non-modifiable risk factors.
Non-modifiable.
But risk factors which are modifiable, which is what we are very interested today about pre-diabetes. These are increased weight, excessive weight gain, increased cholesterol, hypertension, sedentary lifestyle, stress. So these are all factors which, smoking for example, these are all factors which these are modifiable risk factors.
எல்லா கெட்ட பழக்கமும் ஆக மொத்தம்
கெட்ட பழக்கம் இல்ல. I mean food. People love food. Food is
not modernization of lifestyle possibility.
So any life change that any bad lifestyle choices that you do consistently over many years can be risk factors for pre-diabetes.
ஓகே. ஸோ அப்படிங்கிற பட்சத்தில் வந்துட்டு ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் நான் வந்துட்டு ஒரு ரிஸ்க் ஃபேக்டர் இண்டிவிஜுவலா நான் கன்சிடர் பண்ணணும்னா, ஃபார் மீ ஆஸ் அன் இண்டிவிஜுவல், வாட் ஆர் ஆல் த ரிஸ்க் ஃபேக்டர்ஸ் தட் ஐ மைட் பி இன் டு கன்சிடர் மை செல்ஃப் அஸ் அ ப்ரீ டயபெட்டிக்ல வந்து நான் இருக்கணும்னா வந்து வாட் ஆர் த ரிஸ்க் ஃபேக்டர்ஸ் ஃபார் மை சிச்சுவேஷன் எடுத்துட்டீங்கன்னா எப்படி சொல்லுவீங்க நீங்க?
The way I understand your question is for viewers, how to recognize that you are in pre-diabetes stage. எனக்கு என்னென்ன risk factors இருக்கு, நான் எப்படி கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியும்னு கேக்குறீங்க இல்லையா? So I think one of the things is that non-modifiable risk factors இருக்குல்ல. So if you have a family history of diabetes from close relatives, your parents, your siblings, then you should be more alert that you are at risk because genetics comes into that's one thing. As such, as South Asians, the risk of diabetes is very high. Our race and ethnicity is a factor. Age is a factor. When some people say it's not the question of if you will develop diabetes as a South Asian, it's a question of when you will develop. So at some point you will develop. So if you keep that in mind, and then look for these slight changes, any excessive tiredness for no reason, increased thirst, suddenly you become too irritable and stressed, and then you notice change in weight. It could be extreme weight loss or it could be weight gain. It could be either of those extremes. So anything you feel different about yourself, plus you have this family history, those are the people who should go and see the doctor and get the blood test done.
அப்பா அல்லது அம்மா கொடுத்த சொத்து டயபெட்டிஸா இருந்து நம்ம வந்துட்டு ஆப்வியஸ்லி சவுத் ஏசியன் பாப்புலேஷனா இருக்கிற பட்சத்துல மாடிஃபையபிள் ரிஸ்க் ஃபேக்டர்ஸ் நீங்க சொல்றது வந்துட்டு இருந்ததுன்னா வந்து இட் இஸ் பெட்டர் டு கெட் இட் செக்ட்.
Yes.
With all the symptoms that you have mentioned. Okay. Now, yes, எங்க அப்பாக்கு டயபெட்டிஸ் இருந்தது and I am a South Asian population அந்த கேட்டகரியில நான் வரேன் நானு. If that is going to be the condition, எனக்கு என்ன அட்வைஸ் பண்ணுவீங்கன்னா என்னென்ன லைஃப் ஸ்டைல் மாடிஃபிகேஷன் எல்லாம் நான் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு நீங்க அட்வைஸ் பண்ணுவீங்க? இப்போ என்னோட பிளட் டெஸ்ட் நான் பண்ணிட்டேன், ப்ரீ டயபெட்டிக் ரேஞ்சில் இருக்குது, அதை நான் வந்துட்டு ஆரஞ்சு ஆம்பர் ஜோன்ல இருந்து கிரீன் ஜோனுக்கு நான் தள்ளணும் அப்படின்னா எனக்கு என்னென்ன அட்வைஸ் பண்ணுவீங்க நீங்க?
Actually that's a good point. ஏன்னா வந்து நம்ம diabetes or pre-diabetes வந்தாதான் லைஃப் ஸ்டைல் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணணும்னு அவசியம் இல்லை. As such, because it's very common in South Asians, I would advise this to any South Asian. If you are able to make simple changes starting from now, then it's good for you to prevent a number of diseases, not just pre-diabetes. Again, I want to put a disclaimer that I'm not a qualified doctor to give advice, but I think we are trying to collect the information that's widely available in the internet and put it together. So I would say that look for weight. If your BMI is showing that you're overweight or obese, I think you should look at it and try and see if you can reduce it by 10 to 15% over a year. Slow, steady weight loss is better. Don't go for any fat diets.
Okay.
Second thing is exercise. I don't mean you just have to sign up to a gym and go and lift weights and things like that. But simple exercise like 15-20 minutes of brisk walking every day, something that you can sustain and practically do it whilst you continue your busy life. So
Okay.
those are the two important things that I would advise anybody to do it.
Okay. All right.
There are lots of apps, Couch to 15K and marla apps irukku. So you just try and do with your buddies, buddy up with your friends and start doing. So those are the two important things. The third most important thing, which probably we can't cover today, perhaps in another session, is looking at your diet. I think diet is very important, especially to reverse pre-diabetes. I think if you look at making dietary changes, that's also very, very important. And finally, stress management.
Stress க்கும் pre-diabetes என்ன சம்பந்தம்?
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising, isn't it? When you think about stress, people immediately think about hypertension and heart disease or mental health problems. But stress, even though it's kind of happens in your mind, it has a profound effect in your body. So both directly and indirectly. So directly, stress hormones will continue to secrete when you're stressed, and if you're stressed for a long period, your stress hormones like cortisol are going to be very, very high. Without going to the diurnal variation, it will be very consistently very high, which is not good. It's been shown that increased cortisol and adrenaline will cause glucose sort of sensitivity to glucose. அது வந்து insulin வந்து கம்மியாயிடும். I should say insulin sensitivity. So any consistent increase in cortisol and adrenaline can cause problems in insulin sensitivity. So உங்க glucose வந்து செல்குள்ள போறதோட capacity கம்மியாயிடும். So eventually the glucose will be high in your blood. So that's a direct mechanism. Indirect mechanism now, if you're stressed, what do? You just go and have some comfort food. If you're very busy, stressed, you do something to comfort yourself. So over a period of time, that becomes your diet, and you will be having processed food, very quick food, rich food consistently. So that's not good. So both directly and indirectly, stress can cause pre-diabetes and diabetes.
All right. Okay. Now, இந்த செஷனை முடிக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி கொஞ்சம் இதுல இன்சைட் தர முடியுமா சொல்லுங்க. Like being a South Asian, are there any particular challenges that I might face or we might all face when trying to make this lifestyle modification for this pre-diabetic state if we are diagnosed unfortunately? என்னென்ன லிமிடேஷன்ஸ் எல்லாம் நம்ம எதிர்பார்க்கலாம் நம்ம இதுல, ஏன்னா இட்ஸ் கோயிங் டு பி a sudden change in the lifestyle and etc. Any particular challenges that you have seen in your experience or heard from your experience?
I mean, in my experience, but also research has shown that South Asians genetically are predisposed. Plus, also their diet does play a part. I mean, everybody know that simple carbohydrate, refined sugars, processed food can spike the insulin and can spike the glucose level in your blood, which is not good. So, if you look at typical South Asian diet, especially South Indian diet, we use rice. Probably we eat rice-based dishes 3 times a day. Which is bad in itself, but the quantity and the amount of other stuff that we put in our diet, like if you look at the macronutrients, so you've got carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. So if you look at the typical South Indian diet, probably it's very carbohydrate rich. So and also simple carbohydrates, not complex carbs. So you have to look at that. Probably get a dietitian advice and speak to your doctor and see if you can make simple changes to your diet. For example, you might want to consider a low-carb diet. I'm not saying that you starve yourself. It's important that some people may have diabetes already, so it's not safe to do that. So speak to your doctor and dietitian. One example would be swapping the simple carbohydrate to complex carbohydrate. So look at the glycemic index. It's widely available on the internet. Look at the glycemic index of the food that you take and try and see if you can reduce your carb, swap the simple carbs and refined sugars to more complex carbs, add more fruits and vegetables and protein, very important. So these are the changes that you want to make. In fact, the way you start eating, very very simple. I mean, if you're going to sit for a meal, just try and eat vegetables and protein or even fat before you start consuming carbs. So that way it's been shown that the spike of the insulin and the spike in the blood glucose level is much more flatter if you're going to start your meal with vegetables and carbs. So maybe a soup, start with the soup, or start with some legumes, vegetables, and then if you have the rice or chapati or whatever. Sorry, I'm getting a call. I'm just muting it. So that's probably that's definitely very helpful.
It is, நம்மளோட பழக்க வழக்க லைஃப் சாப்பாடு தான் மெயின் எதிரியா இருக்க போது, மற்றதெல்லாம் நம்ம கண்ட்ரோல் பண்ண முடியும். ஓகே, ஃபேண்டாஸ்டிக். Dr. Sridhar, that is of great importance and great insights regarding the pre-diabetes, which if people come to visit our site and if they look at this particular video, and being a South Asian, and especially if our parents are diabetics, then in the other risk factors நம்மளுக்கு இருந்ததுன்னா வந்துட்டு ஆரஞ்ச் ஜோன்ல இருந்துட்டு கிரீன் ஜோனுக்கு நம்மள தள்ள பார்க்கறதுக்கு முயற்சிகள் எடுக்கலாம். இல்லைன்னா வந்துட்டு ரெட் ஜோனுக்கு போனா இட்ஸ் கோயிங் டு பி a permanent diabetes status. And thanks for offering all the wonderful insights, Dr. Sridhar. We really appreciate it, and we will look forward to meet you in the next program about in the how the நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி நம்ம ஃபுட் இன்டேக் அண்ட் ப்ரீ டயபிட்டிஸ் ஸ்டேஜஸ்ல பத்தி அதை பத்தி பேசலாம். Thanks, Dr. Sridhar. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Prakash.